Hello, and welcome to another video from EarnPed.com. I am StevieB. Happy to have you all with us today. Today we are playing the Real Cash Economy MMORPG Entropia universe, which most of you are well aware is practically the only game that I play, and is pretty much what this entire YouTube channel is about. As most of you can see, we are still on the mothership Cronin. I did come down to Calypso last week. I actually made two 1100 PED payouts for EarnPed.com this week, so congrats to both of those players. I'm sorry I was not able to get some of those on video. I prefer to get the big 1100 PED max payouts on video if I can. It was a time coordination issue and I was not able to do that, but big congrats. One of those players could actually turn around and withdraw another 1100 PED right now if he wanted to. It is by far one of the biggest supporters we've ever had. I want to give a huge grats and a huge shout out to that. Most people try and get their earned PED balance as high as they can because you get a 1% bonus on a 100 PED withdrawal, a 2% bonus on a 200 PED withdrawal, so on and so forth. And the cap is a 10% 100 PED bonus on a 1000 PED withdrawal, which is how these two players ended up with an 1100 PED withdrawal. This player specifically had over 2,300 PED saved on EarnPed.com. So big shout out there. Much appreciated. We've only had a few people hit the 1,100 PED withdrawal mark, and that is the only person that I know of that has had almost twice that, or over twice that, available for withdrawal at one time. So huge thanks for all the support. Thank you to all the Stevies, regardless of how much or how little you use EarnPed, regardless of how much or how little you use the YouTube channel. Your support means a lot to us. We have plenty of sips today. I think you guys are going to like the show for the day and what we are going to be talking about. I'm sure it will ruffle a few feathers, which is always great because I love it whenever that happens. That gives us a little bit of back and forth that we can do between me, the other content creators in the community. So first of all, I want to say that I am sorry I haven't been able to be on as much as I wanted to be on, either in-game or on YouTube. As most of you know, I took this new job at the end of November, beginning of December, and I'm working the night shift primarily. However, I've worked some really weird shifts. I've been working 18-hour shifts, split shifts, you name it. I am apparently suffering from something called shift differential disorder, which I did not even know was a thing. So the best way I can explain it is like tonight's my night off. Normally I would go into work here in about an hour, and I would work all night and get off early in the morning about 7 a.m. So I got off this morning. I came home. I went to bed. I slept all day. I got up literally an hour and a half ago, and I've had my quote-unquote breakfast. Well, now the problem is it's dark outside. It's 9 o'clock at night local time. So my body knows, hey, stupid, it's nighttime. You're supposed to be sleeping now. You're supposed to be getting ready for bed. So it doesn't matter that I slept all day. It doesn't matter that I just got up. Now my body's internal clock is telling me that I need to go back to bed. So now I'm going to sleep most of the night, get up very early in the morning, have, 7-8 hours to myself between 5 a.m. and noon. And then I'm going to have to lay down and say, hey, stupid, I know it's daylight out. It's time to go back to sleep because you have to work tonight. So my internal clock is kind of all over the place. Now, there are some things that I've done. If any of you guys are suffering from insomnia, shift differential disorder, any kind of sleep disorders, a couple of tips I'll give you that have been working for me. Number one, obviously this is not something I practice, but I will preach it. Stay away from caffeine. Obviously, I'm drinking Death Wish coffee right now. It is the strongest coffee known to man without all the bitter taste. Death Wish is amazing. It's one of my favorite coffees. I'm in no way affiliated with them. You can buy all the Death Wish coffee you want. I'm not going to make any money off it. It's just good coffee. But coffee is pretty much what keeps me going all night and all day. Also, I'm back on the Dr. Pepper kick, so my blood is 90% caffeine. So if you're having insomnia, if you're having trouble sleeping, obviously caffeine is probably a factor. The biggest thing that's helped me is I just blacked out my room. I went in and every window, every crack, every crevice, I've done whatever I can to make sure that no daylight gets in there. So if it's daylight outside, it's dark in the room, which helps trick the body and its internal clock. And a big thing is I don't have my computer or anything that I use for work or revenue generation anywhere near my room. The only time I'm in my room, the only time I'm in my bed is if I'm sleeping. I will not get in bed and be on the phone. I will not get in bed and be on social media. I literally go in there, I go to sleep, I get up, I leave to do other things. So my room is like a completely separate, holy spot where it is always dark, so I can go to sleep whenever I want, and where no work is being done, so I can shut my brain off. So if you guys have been suffering from any kind of sleep issues, those might be a couple of quick tips to help you out. So on to today's video. Let's go ahead and let's check out the Entropia Exchange. So this is what we want to look at. Obviously, you can see the only share that I own in the Entropia Exchange is Crystal Palace Space Station shares, to which I have roughly 1,528 at the moment. These are the CP shares that we've talked about many, many times before that most of you are pretty familiar with. So if we hit buy, we can see that currently they can be purchased for $17.50 a share. This is actually lower than they've been trading. They've been at $18 to $18.75 a share pretty steadily. We did not see this drop in price until about 2 weeks ago, the past 14 days or so. I was able to pick up some more at $17.50 a share. However, having over 1,500 shares, I'm kind of in the position where I really don't need more necessarily. I'm in a position where being sure that I'm properly geared up for mayhem, properly geared up for whatever hunting and mining I want to do in game, properly geared up for anything else I might need to do, kind of takes precedence over just accumulating more and more shares endlessly at this point. So for right now, I'm not buying more. If I didn't have mayhem coming up, I would probably be buying more. Obviously, I think that it's a great deal. I think these things should honestly be trading about 35 pet a share, but that's just me. I've been there since the beginning, and I'm going to stay there till the end of time. I do think they will eventually get there. I think part of the problem in keeping them from getting there, and I think this is the problem we're seeing game-wide, is just MindArc's willingness to constantly create new shares, new deeds, new things for us to have passive income from. I think the amount of options they're putting out there isn't necessarily good. I think a lot of things like Compet should have never been in game. Compet deeds still sell on auction, which is amazing because they're literally worthless. Compet doesn't even exist. It had one payout ever like 5 years ago, and they straight up said these things are worthless, do not buy them, and people still buy them for some reason. So if we go to market, we see that Ancient Greece still has 256,000 shares. We can see that there is one lowly share available for 11 ped, 255,087 shares available for 10 ped, and somebody is trying to dump the 1,640 shares that they bought and probably wish that they had not at $9.99. Ancient Greece has been improved. The Next Island team is doing a good job finally getting their act together when it comes to content and things that players actually want. I'm noticing that the new instance that drops the Titan armor, it's actually got creatures in it worth hunting that have loot with markup and demand. It's not all this random crap Next Island loot. It's almost like I was correct when I told them that this isn't necessarily the best game on the planet, but it is the best real cash economy game on the planet. So maybe focus a little bit more on the economy aspect if you want to draw people in. But obviously, Ancient Greece shares still not going anywhere. So the big news that came out earlier this week, and I'm sorry guys, with my sleep schedule and work, I just haven't been able to make a video till now. New Treasure Island shares are now tradable. As we can see, out of the 800,000 total shares, that would be this number over here. This is the total float. So there's 500,000 total shares of Crystal Palace out there, which 3,280 are currently offered on market. 400,000 total shares of Ancient Greece, of which 256,000 currently offered on market. So, and remember, this is still an IPO stage. This still has not sold out. Crystal Palace sold out in 3 days. This still has not sold out. 800,000 shares of New Treasure Island. 69,902 shares are currently available for sale. Now, there was a lot said early on about how fast the Treasure Island shares sold out. Here's the problem. I have called it from the beginning. There is something wrong with this picture. There is something massively, massively wrong with this picture. First of all, when they sold out in like 20 minutes, but almost more than half the shares were bought by apparently 2 individuals in 2 transactions. So in real dollar terms, you're talking almost $500,000. That is an incredible amount of money. Now, especially for a video game. Crystal Palace, well worth it. New Treasure Island, I just didn't see it. I still don't see it. Now, if you go back to the initial press release and you look at the mob list and the stuff that's on the island or New Treasure Island and kind of the borders and everything, really what jumps out to me is when they made that initial announcement, they'd put some clause in there like, oh, and we might add mobs that were previously only available somewhere in space or on a specific land area. Maybe. So they had like this long list of all the mobs that were there, and then at the bottom it was like a footnote, we might add these 2 mobs. So they sold the New Treasure Island shares, and then they immediately put those mob spawns there, knowing those are mobs players want to hunt, knowing those are mobs that Ubers want to grind, and it wasn't like an event, like they were just suddenly there. So had they said beforehand, we're going to put these mobs there, they will no longer only be available somewhere else, they will indeed be on this land area, for sure, then maybe it would have changed my outlook a little bit. But what seems sketchy to me is it's like there was inside information, like somebody knew it wasn't a footnote, it wasn't something they were considering, it was already done, it was already built into the plan, it was already baked into the update. And I'm sure there's more than just that goes into it, but it seems like this was a backroom deal from the start for me. It seems like somebody knew from the start to have their money in game, ready to go, and knew that it was going to sell out in minutes because they were going to buy the vast majority. It seems like it was negotiated that those mobs were going to be baked into it and put in that update. There's a lot of stuff that seems like it was done in a back room with New Treasure Island, and it's felt that way from the very start. The fact that it sold out in 20 minutes when it had essentially been a dead land area for a decade, and Crystal Palace, which had this huge track record of massive year-over-year profits, and a whole lot of things that are really unique about it in the game, took 3 days and was highly sought after. The whole thing just seemed fishy. Like, if you're going to try and pull a slick one, it wasn't very slick. It was obvious to anybody who looked at it there was something wrong with this picture. Well, here we are, a couple months down the road, and now all those New Treasure Island shares are available to actually be traded. When you first bought them, there was a blackout period. They could not be traded. As of the update last Tuesday, they could be. So right now, there's 69,902 shares available for sale. So let's hit buy. Let's do some looking here. And what we see is that we can buy for as little as 13.45 pet a share. Now, these were originally 10 pet each. So if you had originally bought in, this would allow you to make a 34% profit in only 3 months if you were selling at this price. Now, let's annualize that. That would be over 100% profit on an annualized scale. That would actually be close to 124% annualized because it's been roughly about 3 months. So if we annualize that out, that'd be about 120% profit. So from a hedge fund perspective, from a professional investment perspective, to make 34% or 34.5% in only 3 months is a pretty freakishly amazing thing to be able to pull off. Now, here's what I find interesting. If we look here on just this page, we see that this person's offering 328 shares, this person's only offering 14, this person's offering 99, this person's offering 46, 50, 50, and notice there's 6 pages. Let's go through them. Look at these numbers. Just keep looking at the numbers for me. Okay, now let's go through this, and this is where I'm going to go into crazy town for a minute. I'm going to go a little bit off the rails here. These don't look like totally randomly generated numbers to me. Now remember, the way the share system works is it's a lowest price first. So I can put 9,300 shares up at 53 pet a share. However, anybody in their right mind is just going to come behind me with whatever number of shares they want. It can be as little as 1 and a lower price. And it's almost like a reverse auction. They're just going to keep playing nutcut until they get to a price where it's so low that people start buying, right? So obviously, if you got on here right now, you would want to buy at $13.45 and pick up one of those 328 shares instead of paying 53 ped and picking up one of those 9,300 shares, right? But this does not look totally random to me. it looks like somebody, remember, almost more than half the shares were bought by two people. So out of the 800,000 shares, more than half were bought by two individuals, right? So conceivably, I could see these all being from different players, that each of these sell orders is from a different individual. However, what looks to me is like somebody, probably an individual player, bought about 9,300 shares and is just throwing them up to see what would happen. They threw it up as soon as trading began, and if the price shot through the roof, they stood to make big money, so they've just left the order up for a couple days. So let's start looking underneath the 25 mark. Notice we're at 25, 24, 20. Very even numbers, right? 7,600, 5,000, 29.50. Then we've got 19.99, 50, 17.50, 100, 14.99, 500. So look at those numbers right there. That to me looks like it's designed to be a trading block. 5,000 at 14.98. So here's my thought process. As these orders have come in, essentially these orders right here, all of these above 14.99 are designed so that if the price snaps, yeah, you sell 500 at 14.99. Yeah, you sell 100 at 17.50, 15 at 19.99. But then, had there been enough demand, all of a sudden you're not really selling the big chunk of your block until you get between 20 and 25. So if you're a trader who has 400,000 shares, it makes sense to put in several sell orders and give up a total of 650 shares below 20, and then have almost 3,000 available at 20, 5,000 at 24, and 7,600 at 25. That makes a ton of sense to me from a trading perspective. Now, I could see this one right here being an individual, and this is where we start to see some of the individual people that bought in come in. This does not look like a professional trading block. This does not look like a professional trading block. This one kind of does, because it would only be 20 PEC cheaper. This one kind of does, because that would be a price point that most traders would be familiar with. But if we go back even further, 1608, 1608, 1608, and again, only a few PEC difference between them. That just looks like somebody that split their holdings into three different price points. So the problem with this system compared to the auction system is, on the auction system that we have on Planet, you can actually see who is selling that particular deed, who is selling that particular item. You can't see that with this. So if I want to take my 1,500 Crystal Palace shares and I want to split them into blocks of 50, 50, 100, 250, 500, 50, 50, 50, I can. And I can put the prices all over the place in an attempt to kind of game the system. Now, do I believe that's happening between 13.45 and 15 PED? No. I believe that these right here between 14.99 and 35, specifically between 14.99 and 25, this right here looks like it was a gaming of the system. If there was a little demand, they were trying to only give up about 650 shares. If there was huge demand, they were willing to give up well over 15,000 shares because of the price that they would get. They would literally have had 100% profit at 20 and well over at 24 and 25, which annualized out would be absolutely insane percentage-wise. So this right here looks like a professional trading block to me. Could be wrong. Could just be reading tea leaves here. But the bigger thing is the current price point itself, 13.45. Yeah, it's 34% higher than the IPO price a couple months back, but is there really the value there? Well, let's look at the history of the trading for the past couple of days. When trading first opened, there was some lucky buyers who got in around the 13 PED mark, and then it shot up to right at 14.72. 14.72 PED a share, right? And then notice it has steadily dropped off since that. Now it's gotten down to 13.50, and then it's peaked a little to 14, and then it's dropped again, and then it's peaked, and then it's dropped, and then it's peaked. What we're seeing is not what we saw with Crystal Palace. With Crystal Palace, what we saw is this almost constant upward trend where more people wanted to buy, wanted to buy, wanted to buy, wanted to buy. The price eventually stabilized at 16, went up to 17, went up to 18, and then it's kind of hung out between 18 and 19 for the past 6 months or so. The only reason we're seeing a dip right now, I believe, is two reasons. Three reasons. A, the fact that these shares have now become available. B, Mayhem is coming up. People need liquid PED in order to get weapons, armor, and gear for Mayhem. And C, the time of year. This is the time of year right after Christmas, first quarter, right before tax season, that everybody's finally getting those bills in from the Christmas season. So money's generally tight for most people this time of year anyway. If that's true in life, it's going to be even more true in game. So I believe that's the only reason that Crystal Palace shares have really seen a little bit of a dip over the past couple of weeks. In fact, let's pull up the Crystal Palace. I'm going to pin this. That's what this little button is for, guys, by the way. You can keep this window open if you hit this pin when you open another window. That comes in handy when you're looking at multiple items side by side. So let's see. Show on graph for a decade. No, let's see. Show on graph for a year. So we would need to go back further than a year, but decade really doesn't help us. But you can see for the past year, CP shares were at 1850. They popped up to 19. They dropped down to 18. They popped back up. They've pretty well stayed between 18 and 19 for almost the past year. And then starting in December, they kind of hung out around 18. And then over the past, let's see, when was that? About the past 3 weeks, they've kind of done this slow dive towards 1750. And again, I don't think this is anything particularly telling about Crystal Palace. Nothing has substantially changed with Crystal Palace. I think it's just the time of the year, the fact that we've got Mayhem coming up, the fact that money's tight in real life and in game, and the fact that people expected these shares to come available for New Treasure Island. So these will pop back up to the 18 to 19 range. I wanted to see, and I can't hardly see it because of the way the graph is here, but notice that when they very first started trading, we go all the way back to the beginning, and the graph is just too tight. If we could go all the way back and just look at those first 3 months or so, what we would see is almost a straight upward trend. Let's try this again. And in fact, you can kind of see it just more or less does go straight up. Even on this graph. This is not a very good graph. I wish we could isolate those first 3 to 6 months. However, it does almost go straight up. What we see with New Treasure Island is there's an initial pop, and then it almost goes straight down. But why is there that initial pop? There's that initial pop because by having the IPO for New Treasure Island compressed down to that 20-minute period where only a handful of people were able to get their hands on it, there are people out there who they don't want 400,000 shares. Maybe they want 1. Maybe they want 10. Maybe they want 50. They only want a handful. There's a lot of players in game. They just get 1 of each share, 1 of each deed. That way they can just track the income over time. They don't really care if it makes money or not because they only have 1 share. So it costs them a whopping $1 to $1.35 to get into Crystal Palace or to get into Ancient Grace or to get into New Treasure Island. They're just spending that $1 to $2 so that they can start tracking it over time and make a graph or keep track for history's sake. So I believe the reason for the pop was not necessarily this insane amount of value. I believe the reason for the pop was we had so many players that did not get in on that initial 20 minutes that wanted in, and they more or less did. And then the demand has slowly tapered off ever since, and probably will continue to do so. Now, what I do not have at this point, and what I really need in order to make a really sound judgment about what's going on here, is I need information for the past 3 months on what the payouts have been every single week on New Treasure Island. I don't know if there's been a payout every single week. I don't know if there's weeks where the payout was missed. I don't know how much that payout was. But I need that information, like we had with Crystal Palace, if I'm going to make any kind of determination about what's going on with New Treasure Island, the value of the shares, and where the future is from here. As of right now, just based off the chart, based off the supply and the demand, and knowing that there were those people who were not able to get in on that first 20 minutes, I still stick with my initial assessment. There's not a ton of value here. Not from a long-term appreciation perspective, not from an income perspective, because this entire pop looks like it was just done by the bottleneck of people who wanted at least one share that did not get in that initial 20 minutes. So it looks like there were some people who got lucky and have dumped several thousand shares to that crowd, and it looks like demand is just steadily dwindling off from there. So that is kind of my assessment at this point. Now, like I said, I might be missing something because I don't have the week-by-week income information yet. But at this point, it looks like my initial assessment was correct. So imagine that, me being right yet again. No way. If anybody has the week-by-week information from the new Treasure Island shares as to what they've paid out, when they didn't, feel free to private message me that in-game, so I will have that information so I can do a little bit more in-depth analysis, a little bit better analysis. But right now, it looks like the only reason they're really selling is because so few people got their hands on them in those first 20 minutes. So do I see it long-term being something super worth putting your money into? Not really. Crystal Palace still seems to be the better of the two evils. I guess it really isn't as bad as it could have been. It's not ancient Greece by a mile, so that's a good thing, right? And I think we do have a problem where in this game, Mindark is just letting too many deeds be made. I'm fine with the underground deeds for Arcadia. I think the Arcadia Moon deeds should have been held off until the moon was fully developed and had good content and had reason for players to be there and had players who wanted to be there. I think there was no reason for the underground deed, for the moon deed to exist. Underground deed, yes. I think that ancient Greece should have been required because Next Island is a planet partner to make some kind of substantial content improvements, substantial improvements to their types of loot on their planet and how they cater to the player base before they were ever allowed to offer an insane number of shares for what was essentially 5 minutes worth of programming. They added a couple of mission chains, a few shared loot spawns, and some new bosses, and they called it worth, almost $1 million. And then they had to walk that back, which is why their shares have been cut down to only 400,000, because what was it initially, 750,000? So they had to take almost half the shares off the market because there just wasn't value there, and they still can't sell them out. They still have 256,000 that they can't sell. I guess that number looks better because it got cut in half. It was almost 600,000. So obviously that one was a massive failure. Compet should have never been allowed to happen. Do I think Treasure Island should have been allowed to happen? Yeah, I think there is some amount of value there. How much, I don't know. It's hard to say because it didn't have the 10-year history of month-over-month, year-over-year profitability that Crystal Palace had. But New Treasure Island, it probably was a backroom deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Death of Fire actually still owns a large chunk. I don't know if he does or not, but I know somebody was in on it from the back room, at least 2 people. So I think New Treasure Island should be there. I think it's probably going to be good for the game long term. I think Mindark will do things to improve it and make it profitable come hell or high water because of those 2 people buying in for that amount that quickly. I think they almost have to make sure it succeeds in some manner. That's what it's starting to look like anyway. So I just really can't tell enough about it because A, they're not really letting it stand on its own. They didn't leave it as it was. They did put those spawns there, even though it was a footnote in the release that said, maybe we will, maybe we won't. So it's not like they're really just letting it stand on its own. And like I said, without that income trail for the past 3 months, I really can't project any kind of calculations going further. 3 months really isn't statistically enough anyway. So do I look any happier about New Treasure Island shares than I did? Nope. If anything, I'm happy to just be right that they have not taken off the way everybody claimed they would. Yeah, it took Crystal Palace 3 days to sell, but the demand for the shares has always been very, very high. This took 20 minutes to sell, and it looks like the demand is only there because of a bottle cap in the initial sell-off, and it is going to be continually dropping. In fact, in the time I've been making this video, 15,000 more New Treasure Island shares have come on the market. Now as low as 13 pet a share. So as you can see, that is quite a price drop. We've gone from 13.45 to 13 pet a share. And we've gone from volume of 69,000 shares available to over 83,000 shares available in one fell swoop. Almost 84,000 shares available. So just in the time I've been making this video, we've seen the price drop even further. I think that the demand for these shares will continue to drop. It would not surprise me to see them trading back at 10 pet a share. It would not surprise me to see them trading below 10 pet a share. So I'm going to leave it there for right now. We will see what happens in the coming weeks. Obviously, this does not look promising for people who bought in early, and I'm sorry if that happened to you, but again, it was a dead land area for almost a decade with no proven business model, no proven reason to be there, and no proven track record of profitability, which, as I said from the beginning, was the complete opposite of Crystal Palace. So I'm going to leave it there for today. If you have that information, private message it to me. We'll go from there, and we will see what happens in the future. Let me know your thoughts on New Treasure Island. Was I right from the get? Was I wrong? Why? Let's start a debate, because when I do that, people get fired up, and it gives me a chance to make 5 or 6 videos, which is awesome because I get paid by the ad. So for now, we will leave everything there while we continue skilling up for Mayhem on the Cronin. Summer Mayhem, Easter Mayhem, right around the corner. For everybody at earningped.com, I've been StevieB, sip, sip, smack, smack, F the haters. You guys know the drill. We appreciate all your support. The best way to support us is through earningped.com, because when you earn, we earn, and we really appreciate all the support you guys have shown. We'll be back with more videos for you later this week, and as always, we'll keep an eye on New Treasure Island shares. You guys have a good one, Stevies.